Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone who's here. Shabbat Shalom to everyone who's out there. We're going to begin our services this morning, page 103, with the Birchot HaShachar, and perhaps a little bit of singing from Cantor Aronoff.
Indeed.
Okay.
La 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 ya na 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 ya la 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 I na 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 la 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 I la 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 I la 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 I la 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 I la 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 la
Please rise as we turn to page 103 and we begin with the Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan las achvivina leavchin ben yom uvein laila.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorin.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechid mitzadei kaver.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael betifara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein layaef koach.
Amen. Baruch
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir she'en ameinu ma'me'av apai v'yiratzon fanach Adonai Eloheinu v'lo eloteinu v'imoteinu. Utneinu hayom v'chol yom l'cheinu l'chesed l'rachamim b'einecha u'v'einei choroeinu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai Gomel chasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael.
Amen. May be seated as we turn to page 112 for Psalm 92, the Psalm for Shabbat.
Hayom yom Shabbat kodesh shebo hayu halavim omrim b'veit hamikdash mizmor shir liyom haShabbat tov lo tov Adonai l'zameh l'shem ha'elyon. Od yunuvun b'seva d'shenim v'rananim yiyu le'agid ki ashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlat tabo.
Page 120.
Mizmor shir chanukat habayit leDavid. Arumim chanukah. 8 lines from the bottom. Elecha Adonai ekra v'yel Adonai etchanan. Elecha Adonai ekra v'yel Adonai etchanan. Shema Adonai v'choneni Adonai ozer li. Shema Adonai v'choneni Adonai ozer li. מצפדי למחולי, פיתחת עסקי ותעזרני שמחה, למען יזמרך כבוד ולא ידום, Adonai Elohai leolam modeka.
Mourner's Kaddish is found on page 121. I invite anyone both here or out in the virtual reality or virtual service to please rise and join me if you are reciting the Mourner's Kaddish for someone and remembering them at this time. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'yimru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach leolam lo me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata d'amiran be'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. We now turn to page 122 as we begin Psukei de Zimra with Baruch Shemar. And once again, I ask everyone to please rise.
שאמר והיה העולם ברוך הוא ברוך עושה בראשית ברוך אומר ועושה ברוך עוזר מקיים ברוך מרחם על הארץ ברוך מרחם על הבריות ברוך משלם שכר טוב ליראיו ברוך חי לעד וקיים הנצח, ברוך פודה ומציל, ברוך שמו. היי נה 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 יא לה 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 לה, היי לה 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 לה, יא לה לה יא נה 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 נה, יא נה יא נה 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 נה, יא נה נה יא נה 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 נה, יא נה נה יא נה נה יא נה נה נה, יא לה לה יא לה לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה יא לה לה. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yachid chei olamim melech mishubach umfoar adei ad shemo agadol. Baruch atah Adonai melech meulal batishbachot.
May be seated, page 136, Ashrei.
Ashrei ushvei veitecha od yalelucha selah. Ashrei ha'am shekach lo Hashem Adonai Elohav tehillah leDavid. Amen. פותח את ידיך ומשפיע לכל חי רצון צדיק, אדוני בכל דברך וחזק בכל מעשיו קרוב אדוני בכל קרוב. תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. הללויה. Hallelujah, hallelujah, nafshi et Adonai, hallelujah, Adonai b'chayai.
If you wish, you may continue on page 137.
Adonai shomer gerim, yatom yamana yoded, v'derech rishaim ye'avet, yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai chtzil nedor v'ador. Hallelujah.
Page 141, Psalm 150.
Ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai la lai lai lai. Ya lai la lai 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 la lai ya lai la lai 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 lai. Ya lai la lai 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 la lai. Ya lai la lai lai ya lai 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 lai. I lai la lai 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 la lai. Lai lai la lai 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 lai. Hallelujah, hallelujah. El bekodsho, hallelujah, berkia uzo. Hallelujah, bigvurotav, hallelujah, kerov gulo. Hallelujah, betei kashofar, hallelujah, beneva vechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, beminim veugav, hallelujah, betziltzele shama, hallelujah, betziltzele trua, kol anshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah. Kol hanshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I lai la lai 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 la lai. Lai lai la lai 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 lai. Baruch Adonai leolam amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai mitzvot. וברך שם כבודו לעולם, וימלך כבודו את כל הארץ. אמן ואמן.
We turn now to page 145, Nishmat Kol Chai.
נשמת כל חי, תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו, וכל בשר תפאר. אז נבלים, אז ובבים, לך לבדך, אנחנו מודים מלופינו מלא שיר הקיים, ראשוננו המון גלה, וזבטותינו שבח המון, בינינו מירון השמש וחי הירח. עדינו עבדינו באמותינו ועמנו, ממצרים גאלתנו אדוני אלוהינו מבין עבדים פדיתנו. כי כל פה לך יודע, וכל לשון לך תשבע, וכל ברך לך תכרע, וכל קומה לפניך תשתחווה, וכל לבבות יראוך, וכל קרב וכליות יזמרו לשמך, כדבר שכתוב, כל עצמותי תאמרנה אדוני מי כמוך, מציל אני מחזק ממנו, ואני באביון מגוזלו. מי ידמה לך ומי ישווה לך ומי יערוך לך, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ. נהללך ונשבחך ונפארך ונברך את שם קודשך, כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו.
6 lines down on page 147, we continue with Shochenad Marom.
שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב לנו צדיקים אדוני להשם. ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. בריני פרשם המגן המחול הרבדור שגן המחול יצור. על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נוער. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות. אל ההודעות, אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
וילמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחייכו בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפור ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן ביעלמה וימרו Amen.
We turn now to page 149. I'm going to ask everyone both to please rise for the call to worship, the Barchu. And as this is one of about, I'd say about 4 or 5 times in the service where the tradition requires us to face east, I'm going to ask everyone to face that way.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer or uvorei choshech Oseh shalom uvorei et hakol.
May be seated 4 lines down on page 150. Hakol Yeducha, we continue.
Hakol yoducha v'kol yishabchucha v'kol yimun kadosh koronai yakol. Ein kirkecha v'ein sulatecha, efes piltecha u'midam elach. Ein kirkecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh, v'ein sulatecha malkeinu lechaye ha'olam haba. Efes piltecha go'aleinu limot ha'mashiach, v'ein dam elecha moshienu litchiyat ha'metim. Ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai 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 El Adon al kol ha'ma'asim baruch umvorach b'fi kol neshama godlo v'tuvo malei olam Da'at u'tvuna sovevi moto ha'mitko el chayot ha'kodesh v'nedar b'chavod al ha'merkava tzechut u'mishor lifnei chisa chesed v'rachamim lifnei kevodo Tovim meyorot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'da'at b'vina uv'haskel Koach ugvura natan bahem Liot moshlim bekerev tevel Leim ziv u'mfikim noga Noe zivam bechol ha'olam Semechim b'tzeitam v'sasim bevoam Osim b'yem ha'retzon konam Pe'er v'chavod no'ot lishmo Tzola verina lezecher malchuto Kara l'shemesh vayizrachor Ra'a vehitkin surat halvana Shevach na'onim lo Kol tzivam arom Tiferet u'gedula Serafim ve'yofanim v'chayot ha'kodesh Ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai lai ya lai la lai ya lai la lai 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 La el asher shavat mikol hama'asim
Top of page 152.
תתברך מושיינו על שבח מעשה ידיך, ועל מאורי אור שעשית יפרוך הסלע. תתברך צורנו, מלכנו וגואלנו, בורא קדושים.
Page 153.
ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא. להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה ובנימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נעימות ייתנו, למלך חי וקיים זמיר תשמעו ותשמעו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Amen.
אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו חמלה.
Page 154, followed by the Shema on page 155.
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע סלע, באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Continue with the second and third paragraphs of the Shema, page 156.
Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, emet. Yatziv nacham v'kayam v'eshav. לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וחיסון נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. רב חיים על הראשונים אל האחרונים דבר טוב וקיים לעולם ועד מאיפה נחוק לעבור אמת שעתו. פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו אתה הוא מעולם. מגנו מושיע לבניהם אחריהם בכל דבר טוב. Also Jebuchu Avim Ramuel Tilo le'el elyon baruch hu v'orach Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Yisrael anu shira Besimcha rabba v'yamru chulam Yalai la lai lai yai lai la lai yai lai la lai la lai 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 Yai la lai 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 yai la lai 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 la lai 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 Yai lai la lai 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 yai la lai yai lai la lai lai yai la lai Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Norah tehilot osef eleh, Shira chadasha shibechu geulim, Leshimecha al sfat hayam, Yachad kulam hodu ve'imlichu ve'yameru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Yalai la lai lai yai lai lai yai lai la lai 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 Yalai la lai 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 Yalai la lai lai yai lai 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 Yalai la lai 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 Tzur Yisrael Kuma b'Yezrat
Please rise.
Yisrael Uftechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
Amidah begins on page 159, and we join together through the Kedusha, which will take us through page 161. The Amidah then continues to the end of page 166, and this is also one of those places where we traditionally face east, so I'm going to ask everyone to turn that way.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Agadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vekonei Hakol וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומיתו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים כה, מתנשאים לעומת צרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון? בקרוב בימינו, לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראינה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
If you're finished, you may be seated.
Yitkara v'yitkara shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
B'yama divrach yurutev yamlich malchutei b'chayechonu v'yemechonu v'chay d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'isman kariv yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach. Li'olam li'omei omaya. Yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpor v'yitruman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalel shmei dekudesha. Brichu li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiram b'yama v'imeru. Amen. Titkabel tzolotonu v'alton d'chol Yisrael kodama v'honi v'shmaya v'imeru. Amen. Yesh lam rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imeru. Amen.
Yashka, can't turn enough. Thank you so much for leading us through Shachrit. At this point in time, we are being able to celebrate, and we want to wish Mazel Tov to Ali and her family. Yay! As we're celebrating Ali's bat mitzvah. A little bit later than we expected, but we're here. This is cool. So at this point in time, I want to invite up Ali's parents, Craig and Lori, as they're going to present Ali with her talit.
Made it. Almost a year later, but you made it. You've been preparing a long time for this day. Not only for the past year, but you've been preparing for this day for many years as you grew up here at Adat Ariel, graduating first from the preschool and then the day school. And we want to thank all your wonderful teachers here at Adat Ariel for helping to build such a strong foundation for you in Judaism. I also want to remember your great-grandparents, who are no longer with us, who greatly influenced my foundation in Judaism. I know Papa Harry, Papi Nat, and Grandma Esther would be so proud of you today.
And also, my Pop and Mama and Grandma, and especially Grandpa Hyatt, who you honored in your Shorashim project in school this year.
At Jacob's bar mitzvah, Dad gave him a talis as it was passed down to him at his own bar mitzvah. Well, when I had my bat mitzvah back in the day, I did not receive a talis, and so this one is brand new. I hope one day you will pass this down to your own daughter, and I hope you feel the pride that your dad and I feel today.
And we hope you can feel all the love from your family and friends here today, in person and virtually.
We put this on her now. Put the tally on now? Okay.
I think we do that.
We put it on now?
Put on now or keep
Okay, yeah.
it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahitatef bat tzitzit.
Amen.
Oops. Few malfunctions. Ali, you have always been so easy to love, and you shine wherever you go. And I don't only mean on stage. You shine from within. You've always had a carefree, easy spirit, an openness that draws people in and makes them feel comfortable. You make friends wherever you go. From a very early age, Ali, you've had this gift of connecting with people. And I think that that is one of the most important gifts a person can possess. This year has been so hard on so many levels because we couldn't connect. We couldn't physically be with the people we love most. but today feels like a new day. Look out there at your family and friends here today to share this special day with you. This is what life is about. This is what matters.
So our wish for you today is to always be surrounded by family and friends, to never take it for granted, to be grateful for all that we have and for every moment that we have to share together.
Okay. We wish for you to stay true to who you are, to live up to your name, Alison Grace, as you have done so well so far. Keep up that grace.
We hope that you keep that quiet confidence, that you listen to your own voice, and always believe in yourself.
We hope that you will continue to build upon your Jewish foundation and carry on the traditions that connect us.
We wish you health, happiness, and peace as you begin this journey into adulthood and throughout your life. And may you always be surrounded by love.
Love you.
Amen.
Amen.
Alrighty, with the family staying up there, we now turn to page 168 as we begin the Torah service with Ein Kamocha.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshatecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch li'olam va'ed Adonai oz li'amo yitain Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom avarachamim heitiv avirtzonecha et Zion tivne chomot Yerushalayim tivne chomot Yerushalayim ki vecha levad batachnu melech elam v'nisa Adon olamim.
We rise now as the ark is open, the middle of page 168.
Jacob and Evan, if you can come up as well, and if you guys can open up the ark. And open up. Vayehi bin Soah Haaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, Veyafutsu Oivecha, Veyanusu Misanecha Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion Tetzei. Hold off. Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai, Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato, Be'yanarachet, Ve'lishmei Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbechan, Be'yanarachet, Ve'lishmei Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbechan, Ye'era Kadamach, Detiftach libi bioraita, V'tashli mishalin delibi, V'liba dechol amach Yisrael, L'tavu l'chayin, V'lishlam, Amen. Okay, Craig, if you could pass it to Lori first, the parental generation, and now Craig pass it to our bat mitzvah, to Ali, passing to this generation. And Evan and Jacob, if you could close the ark, please. And we're on page 171. If everyone could please repeat after me. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlul Adonai iti uneromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula v'hagevura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'yamid na'aseh lechol rosh. Romimu,
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 Adonai Eloheinu. Ve'yishtachavu, ve'yishtachavu, lehadom raglav kadoshu. Romimu,
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 Adonai Eloheinu. Ve'yishtachavu, ve'yishtachavu, lehar kodsho, lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. So Craig, if you would take the Torah from Ali, and then Lori or Ali take the cover off the Torah. Yeah, the yod first. We need the cover off. There we go.
I got the yod.
But keep it handy. The belt can come off and go in that box as well. And then cover the Torah. Right? And the Siddur you can put at the top of the table there, or just take it down with you. And is it moved over the Torah safely enough to the right? Good. That'll give Ali some room. All righty.
At this point in time, we're going to ask everybody to please be seated, including Lori.
Leave the card up there. That's great.
And the only person who's going to be standing at this point in time is Ali, as she is going to share some words with us that she has prepared in preparation for this day.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm just going to start out by saying how grateful and excited I am that everyone is able to come and celebrate with me on this special day. Thank you to my family who flew across the country to be here, especially to my nanny sis, who at 97 years old made the journey in a pandemic to be with me. And to my family and friends who couldn't be here with me in person, thank you for taking the time to be with me on Zoom. I also want to express my gratitude to Cantor Aronoff, Rabbi Bernhard, Rabbi Yarkin, and Sarah Samuel for helping me prepare for this day, which I'm so happy is finally here, almost a year after my original date. This year has been very weird and negative in so many ways, but my Torah portion has made me see this past year in a different light. In Parshat Bahar, we learn about the Sabbatical Year. The Torah states that the Sabbatical Year happens every 7 years and is a year of rest for all living creatures and the earth. But what is the purpose of this law? Our ancient rabbis of the Talmud interpreted that the Shemitah law was to ease the burden for farmers and the agricultural industry. Other sages state the importance of letting the trees, soil, and crops rest from human harvesting them is so that they can heal from the damage done to them by constant farming. But what does this have to do with our current situation? Well, it is important because of the lessons and benefits that come out of the situation that we find ourselves in today. The pandemic has felt at times like a sabbatical year. The earth got to rest, there was less air pollution as less people drove their cars or flew in planes. Nature got the chance to heal a little. And the pace of life for many humans and animals got slower and healthier. People got to sleep in and spend more time with their family and got the opportunity to not focus so much on work. And my dog Sunny is especially enjoying the extra time with everyone. So, even though it feels like we are being locked up in our homes, there are benefits that have come out of how we have been forced to live. Throughout this past year, I have learned to be more productive and improve my time management skills. Because of COVID, I wanted to keep up my extracurricular activities and had to find my own time to do it. I took on more responsibilities to make myself busy and having something to enjoy during our time spent locked at home, like dance and theater. I still managed to keep my grades up using time management, and I'm still applying this skill in my daily life, even with the excessive amount of hours done at dance and theater. The learning experience on Zoom is harder and it's challenging to concentrate because we are more easily distracted. It's a big problem for everyone, but I've been taking my learning seriously, as I've thought about why I go to school in the first place. Schoolwork helps me reach my full potential, so even though it's tough to learn remotely, I'm still trying my best to focus. I put my phone in the other room when I'm in class to help stay present and be able to process what's going on. And so do a lot of my friends and family, because we all have to adapt to this new lifestyle. Time management is all about balance. It's impossible to do everything. When I was in 7th grade and transitioning to middle school, I had to quit one of my dance commitments, as I was juggling too much, with all the schoolwork I was having and musical theater rehearsals. But this year has taught me so many lessons, and I'm very lucky to have been able to find the good in these dark times. And I believe that this was the lesson that Moses was hoping the Israelites would take from the sabbatical year as well. So, I hope you take inspiration from my personal experiences and this Torah portion to analyze and apply the lessons you have learned from this past year. These verses are a reminder that we all need to balance rest and work and use our time wisely, and not just human beings, but animals and planet Earth too. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Yasher Koach. Terrific words there, Ali. Thank you so much. We now turn to page 744 in our Chumashim, in our Bibles, where we have the Torah reading that we're going to be doing. Okay, Cantor's just giving some instructions there. The Torah reading, Parshat Bahar, Bechukotai, is the very end of the book of Leviticus. So we have chapters 25, 26, and 27. And because it's the very end, when we get to that final Aliyah, at some point in time, I'm going to say something like, everyone please rise, or I'm going to gesture with my arms, everyone's going to get up, and we're going to say the words Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, because that is what we say when we get to the end of a book, when we get to the end of the reading, but we're not there yet. Got a lot of talking and stuff to do first. So we begin, as I said, page 744. We are in chapter 25. We are in verse 39. And as Ali mentioned, this is a Torah portion and a chapter that deals with, among other things, the treatment of the land, the need to let the land lie fallow in the Shemitah year. But it also deals with some other issues as well, along lines of, well, let's put it this way. At a time, in ancient times, when you didn't have banks and you didn't have money, and you had to pay off your debtors, what did you do? What could you sell? This is the interactive part of the service. Go for it. Okay. Yourself. You could sell yourself. And so people would sell themselves into an indentured bondage for a period of time that they would then work their way out of their debt, and the debts would all be forgiven on the Shemitah year, and in the Yovel year, the 50th year, the Jubilee year, everyone would return to their original holdings. Everyone would return to their original land. Very radical kind of economic vision that the Torah presents here. And as it begins our Torah reading, page 744, chapter 25, verse 39.
And the instructions for those who are having aliyot,
the first 6 aliyot. You are going to say your blessings from over there. There is a card with the blessings on them. And there's even a bunch of wipes. So if you can take one and just wipe the microphone off when you're done, even though we're wearing masks, we're oh so careful. Okay. Vayazor v'yagin v'yoshil l'chol chosim bo v'nomar amen. Hakol havugad Eloheinu utnu kavod laTorah ya'amdu. Rishon, Aliyah Rishonah, do you know who you are? Ira, Bani, Henry, and Elise. Aliyah Rishonah, Baruch Shanatan, Torah Aliyah Mo Yisrael B'Kedushato.
V'atem hadvikim Adonai Elohechem, Chaim Kulochem Hayom.
Okay, are all 4 of you there?
Baruch Hu es Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Bacha Bonu Mikol Hamim V'nasan Lanu et Toraso. Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah.
Amen. V'chi amuch achicha imach v'nimkar lach lo tavod bo avodat aved kisachir kitoshav yeh imach ad shenat hayovel ya'avod imach ve'yatza me'imach hu uvanav imo ve'shav el mishpachto ולאחוזת אבותיו ישוב, כי עבדייהם אשר הוצאתי אותם מארץ מצרים, לא ימכרו ממכרת עבד, לא תרדה בו בפרך ויראת מאלוהיך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher nasan lanu toras emes v'chayei olam notah b'socheinu. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. יעמדו לבל בן בנימין ואסתר בת יצחק לעלייה השנייה.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ve'avdecha v'amatcha asher yiyu lach me'et hagoyim asher sevivotechem mehem tiknu mehem tiknu eved v'yama ve'gam mibnei atoshavim agarim imachem mehem tiknu וממשפחותם אשר עמכם אשר הולידו בארצכם והיו לכם לאחוזה והתנחלתם אותם לבניכם אחריכם לרשת אחוזה לעולם בהם תעבודו ובאחיכם בני ישראל איש באחיו Lo tirde bo befarech.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ya'amdu l'Aliyah ha'shlishit. Number 3, Randy, Brian, Justin, and Harry, Mishpachat Komak.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai. Baruch Adonai Hambarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'chi tasrig yad ger v'toshav imach umach achicha imo v'nimkar lager toshav imach o le'eker mishpachat ger acharei nimkar geula tieh lo echad me'achiv yigalenu o dodo o ben dodo yigalenu o misher besaro mishpachto galenu O hisig yado v'nigal v'chashav.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And now for the 4th Aliyah, Ya'amdu. Mark, Doris, and Cecile, Aliyah Talvi'it.
Baruch es Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach leolam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Shalom asher b'cha b'tochenu.
Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim.
V'nosan lanu es Toraso. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'hishav im konechu. V'chishav im konechu mishnat hamachoro lo ad shnat hayovel v'hayam kesef mimochoro v'mispar shanim kimei sachir yeimo im od rabot bashanim lefihem yeshiv goto mikesef miknato v'ima'at nishar bashanim ad shnat hayovel v'hishav lo Kefi shanav yeshivet gulato kesir shana b'shana yeimo lo yerdenu bechperech le'necha v'im lo yigal ba'ele v'yatza b'shana hayovel huvana v'imo.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher nosan lanu Torah emes v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ya'amdu Binyamin ben Rivka ve'Avraham ve'Chaya bat Chava bat Chaya ve'Yitzchak l'Aliyah Chamishit.
Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barak Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher barach banu mitzvah. Natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Kili b'nei Yisrael avadim avadaihem asher hotzeti otam eretz Mitzrayim ani Adonai Elohechem lo ta'asu lachem elilim ufeselu matzeva lo takimu lachem ve'even maskit lo titnu b'artzachem nishtachavot aleha ki ani Adonai Elohechem et shabtotai tishmeru umikdashi tira'u ani Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam natan b'tolcheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And as we're calling up the 6th Aliyah, we are now beginning the next Parsha Bechukotai, because this is a double Parsha, Bahar Bechukotai. I have no idea what page it's on, Rabbi, because I don't have the Chumash up here with me. I have the Torah. It doesn't have page numbers.
Well, I have page numbers for you,
Okay.
Cantor. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about
While you're looking for it. Ya'amod Yitzchak Nachum ben Avram David v'Olivia Arnina l'Aliyah HaShishit.
it. 746. See, Cantor? No.
Is it okay?
I'd
That's
never
good.
leave you out there without page number.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Ambarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Ambarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Im bechukotai telechu ve'et mitzvotai tishmeru v'asitem otam v'natati gishmechem be'itam v'natna ha'aretz yivula v'yetz hasadeh yiten period v'hisig lachem dayish et batzir uvatzir yasig et zara v'achaltem lachmechem lasova v'shavtem lavetach be'artzechem.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torat emet. V'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai
Shemo.
noten haTorah.
Amen. So I am now making way for our next Torah reader for the 7th Aliyah, who is going to be Ali. So give me just a second to arrange things.
And now you're picking up the reading on page 748, verse 6.
Ya'amdu Avraham David b'minyamin v'chava Olivia Arnina bat melech u'devora l'Aliyah ha'shevi'it.
Do this first. We do like this thing. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai,
Shema.
notein ha'torah.
Amen.
Amen. Va'af gam zot biheyotam be'eretz oivehem lo ma'asatim velo ge'altim lehalotam lehaper veriti itam ki ani Adonai Elohehem v'zachareti lahem be'rit rishonim asher hotzati otam me'eretz Mitzrayim le'nei hagoyim lihyot lahem Elohim ani Adonai.
Please rise.
Ele hahukim v'hamishpatim v'hatorot asher natan Adonai beino uvein bnei Israel behar Sinai beyad Moshe.
Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek.
Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Oh, I'll do that too.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'toheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, notein ha'torah.
Amen. You may be seated. Can you cover up the Torah, please? Okay, and that was the last bit of the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus, that we're going to read and before next week we start the next book, except that we're going to repeat those same 3 verses for Ali's Aliyah. So wait a second, Craig and Lori, you're staying up there to the left of Ali, right there. No, right to the Lori, to the left of Ali, to the left. Left is that side, Rabbi Bernhardt's side. Yeah, that side of the table. That's good.
That's right. I'm on the left.
Okay. Yitkada v'yitkara shemei rabba v'yalmad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayei decho beit Yisrael bagala u'vizman kariv ve'imeru amen yehei rabba mevorach li'olam li'omei omaya yitbarach Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha, brichu li'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alama, v'yimeru. Amen. I think I already said that we're going to read the same verses, verse 44 through 46. You don't need to stand up again because it's a repetition. So we already said chazak, chazak. We should be strengthened in our completion of one book and are looking forward to starting a next. So you can remain seated as you follow along. And now I'm calling up our bat mitzvah. Tamod, 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 Habachura, Miriam Fruma, Bat Avram David, Olivia Arnina, Bat HaMitzvah, Maftir. Take your talit, uncover the Torah first. And take your talit and kiss the spot where you will be reading. Okay, and grab onto the handle. Bracha.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai
Shema.
noten haTorah.
Amen.
Va'af gam zot biheyotam be'eretz oivehem למעשתים ולא גאלתים, להעלותם, להפריתי איתם, כי אני אדוני אלוהיהם, וזכרתי להם ברית ראשונים, אשר הוצאתי אותם מארץ מצרים לעיני הגויים, להיות להם אלוהים. אני אדוני. אלה החוקים והמשפטים והתורות אשר נתן אדוני בינו ובין בני ישראל בהר סיני ביד משה. Oh, that's my prize.
Second bracha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ya'amdu mishpachat Silverstein lahaba'at uglilat haTorah. So, Craig, this is the point where you lift, and the
everyone to
family
please
helps
rise.
you tie.
Please rise.
Allie, you want to move that little box away? Great. V'zot haTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe. You can put it down and tie it up tight. Roll it up tight before the belt goes on. Yisrael kudsha berichu ve'oraita chadu. Yisrael kudsha berichu ve'oraita chadu. Torah, Torah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Torah, ora, Torah, ora. Hallelujah. Torah, ora, Torah, ora.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Torah, ora, Torah, ora. Hallelujah. You could put the chain. You see the chain there? To hold it in place on the right-hand side, Craig, there's a chain. Yeah, and just sort of wrap it around and hook it on as tight as you can. Don't use a tighter link. Whatever works. And then the silver can go on. Okay. And family, you may have a seat. Even you, Allie.
In fact, everyone may have a seat. At this point in time, we're going to offer up a Misha Berach, a prayer for healing for all who are ill. After sharing the names that I have, if you have a name of someone you wish to add, here, those who have gathered here in our LeBeau Outdoor Chapel, we invite you to please rise at that time. I will tell you when that is. And also for people who are joining us virtually, if you wish to share the names of those who you've loved, those who you care for, who you want to send out a healing blessing to, please share their names on our Facebook page.
Mikor abracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen.
May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring blessing and healing to Tamar bat Miriam, Ethel bat Chana, Chaim Shmuel ben Miriam, Shlomo Eliyahu Halevi ben Bluma, Ber Dov Halevi ben Bluma, Zechari Reuven Halevi ben Shoshana, Robert Cohen, Mark Friedman, Yenta bat Rachel Hava Devora, Rachel Leah bat Freya Chaya, Sarah Devora Bracha bat Zipporah, Rachel Chia bat Rachel, Uri ben Fishel Ubatya, Julie Gordon, Zisel ben Goldie, Hanoch ben Cecilia, Lois Kaplan, Leah bat Sheva, Eliyahu ben Golda, Malka bat Miriam, David Cohen, Rachel Smuckler, Mordechai Moshe ben David Varut, Miriam Devora bat Yehudit, Miriam bat Fishel Meir Ufegala, Charles Turlo Jr., Yael Tzipora bat Hachazan Yehudit Dina, bat Yelea bat Herschel Devora, Avram ben Rachel, Chana Rachel bat Shendel, Shendel bat Chana, Shimshon ben Shimshon v'Karen, Sheva bat Leah, Hinda bat Chana Rivka, Elisheva bat Leora, Barbara bat Devora, Lydia McCarter, Aaron ben Chana v'Yosef, Yehoshua Shmuel ben Yamin ben Rivka Tanya, Tova bat Dina, Leonard Weinberg, June Weinberg, Tzipora Alexandra bat Sarah Devora Bracha, Leah bat Ida Herschel, Nomi Tzivia bat Reuven v'Chana, Sarah Bracha Devora bat Eliyahu v'Tzipora, and Greg Berriman. Is there anyone here who has a name of a loved one that they wish to share? Someone they want to send out a prayer for healing to? May the Holy One mercifully restore all those that we've mentioned this morning and all those in our hearts to health and to vigor, and grant them spiritual and physical well-being together with all others who are ill. And let us all say, Amen.
Mikor bracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Alrighty, my friends, we now turn to page 813 in our Chumashim in our Bibles, and I'm going to invite Ali to come up back once more for she's leading us and chanting the Haftarah, which in this case comes from the book of Judges, chapter 13. In our Torah portion, in Parshat Bahar Bechukotai, the very beginning of Parshat Bahar in chapter 25, it says that when you leave the land to lie fallow, when you do that Shemitah year, that Shabbat of rest for the land and for the Lord, you leave it lie fallow, right? The land is going to still grow. Food will still grow. You're just not meant to till and tend it. And that aftergrowth is referred to as a nazir. It's referred to as a nazir. Aftergrowth is the Hebrew word for it is nazir. And that aftergrowth that the earth just naturally produces, that you may partake of during the Shemitah year. And the reason I mention that is the connection between our Torah portion and our Haftarah. Because our Haftarah for today talks about the prediction of the birth of someone named Samson. Right? And there are a number of qualities about Samson that I suspect many of us know, even if we haven't been to rabbinical school. Like I suspect many of us remember Samson and Delilah and his strength and all that and bringing all the stuff down on the Philistines, right? And the most notable thing about Samson was his hair, exactly, right? His hair, because he never cut it. He let the hair grow. That was the commandment, to let the hair grow. Thanks, Craig, I appreciate that, right? And in the same way that Samson let his hair grow, the Torah commands the Israelites in the Parsha to let the earth grow. And that's why that aftergrowth is referred to as a nazir, and that is why, in part, Samson is referred to as a Nazarite. And it also has to do with the head part, yes. But it refers to, it can be understood as a crown, but it's often understood as an aftergrowth. And hence our Torah portion today, Bahar, is a beautiful connection with our Haftarah because it's talking about the ability to leave things alone. And that is exactly what Ali was speaking about in her Torah portion as well. That one of the things that we have learned through the pandemic is that some things you have to engage, some things you have to kind of be there and participate. And sometimes there is much to be learned by just letting things go, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now, is Ali's going to chant the Haftarah on page 813. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
asher bachar bin v'im tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek Vayahi Isha Mitzorah Mimishpachat Hadani Ushmo Manoach Veishto Akara Velo Yalada Vayara Malach Adonai El Ha'isha Vayomer Eleha Hinena Atakara Velo Yaladet Veharit Veladet Ben Va'ata Hishamrina Ve'al tishti yayin ve'shachar ve'al tochli kol tameh ki hinachara ve'yoladet ben umora lo ya'aleh al rosho ki nazir Elohim yeh hanar min habaten ve'hu yachel lehoshia et Yisrael miyad plishtim Vatavo haisha, vatomer la'isha lemor, isha Elohim ba'elai, umarehu kemarei, malach Elohim nora me'od, velo shiotihu emisehu, ve'et shemo lo higid li. Vayomer li hinahara ve'yoladet ben, Va'ata al tishti yain ve'shachar al tochli kol tuma ki nazir Elohim yeh hanar min habeten ad yomoto vayatar manoach al Adonai vayomar bi Adonai isha Elohim asher shalachta Yavana od elenu ve'yoreinu mana aseh lanar hayulad vayishma Elohim be'kol manoach vayavo malach Elohim od el ha'isha ve'hi yoshevet basadeh umanoach isha ein ima v'temaher ha'isha v'tavrot v'teged la'isha Vatomer elav hine nira elai ha'ish asher ba vayom elai vayakom vayelech manoach achrei ishto vayavo el ha'ish vayomer lo ha'ata ha'ish asher dibarta el ha'isha vayomer ani vayomer manoach Ata yavo devarecha ma'yeh mishpatanar uma'asehu vayomer malach Adonai el manoach mikol asher amarti el ha'isha tishamer mikol asher yitzeh mikefen hayayin lo tochal ve'yayin ve'shachar al teisht v'chol tuma al tochal Kol asher siviti hatishmor, vayomer manoach amalach Adonai, natzrana otach, v'naaseh lefanecha gedi izim. Vayomer malach Adonai amal Noach, im tatzreni lo ochal belachmecha, v'im ta'aseh olah la'Adonai ta'alena. Ki lo yada manoach ki malach Adonai hu vayomer manoach amalach Adonai mishemecha ki yavo devarcha v'kid banucha vayomer lo malach Adonai lama zeh tisha lishmi behu feli vayikach manoach et gedi ha'izim ve'et hamincha vayal al hatzur le'Adonai Umafli la'asot, umanoach ve'ishto ro'im, vayahi, va'alot halahav, me'al ha'mizbeach ha'shamayma, vayal malach Adonai belahav ha'mizbeach, umanoach ve'ishto ro'im, vayiplu al pneihem arza. Below yasaf on malach Adonai, lehera'o, al Manoach ve'el ishto. Az yada Manoach ki malach Adonai hu. Vayomer Manoach el ishto mot namut ki Elohim ra'inu. Vatomer lo ishto lu chafetz Adonai lahamitenu lo lakach miadenu ola umincha velo heranu et kol ele v'cha'et lo hishmianu kazot. Vataled ha'isha bein vatikra et shemo Shimshon vayigdal hanar v'yevarchehu Adonai v'tachel ruach Adonai lefa'amo b'machane Dan bein surah uvein eshta'ol. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol ha'olamim sadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'medaber umkayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davar echad midvarecha ahur lo yashuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman ata baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarav.
Amen.
Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit hagenu v'la'aluvat nefesh toshia bimhera ve'yamenu baruch ata Adonai
Shemo.
mesameach Zion bevaneha.
Amen.
Samheinu Adonai Eloheinu be'aliyahu hanavi avdecha u'malchut beit David meshichecha bimhera yavo v'yagel libenu al kiso lo yeshev zar be'lo yinchalu od acharehim et kevodo ki b'shem kodshecha mishbatalo shelo yichben ero le'olam va'ed baruch atah Adonai
Shemo.
Magen David.
Amen.
Al HaTorah ve'al HaAvodah ve'al HaNevi'im ve'al Yom HaShabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha ve'limnucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach u'mevarachim otach yitbarach shimcha befi kol ha'tamid le'olam va'ed baruch atah Adonai
Shemo.
mekadesh ha'shabbat.
Amen. Shakoah.
Shakah. Allie, well done. Stay up there. Also, there is some candy beneath your chair there, Jacob. This would be a good time to distribute said candy, especially to that group of people there who are going to want to throw it at Allie. Huh? All righty. So, Allie, again, Yasher Koach, beautiful job here this morning and beautiful words that you shared in terms of your Devar Torah as well. Thank you very much. This week's Torah portion, as you mentioned, is really an amazing Torah portion and contains within it so many ideas that we can look at and take a certain amount of pride in, right? So the fact that the Torah was sensitive to the nature of the land and protecting the land, right? And you have that Shemitah year, that time to let the land lie fallow. The sensitivity that the Torah shows towards other, within the society, the understanding that people will have to, because there were no banks, as I mentioned at the time, people did sell themselves, but the Shemitah year would come along and they would be released from that. And then the Yovel, the Jubilee year would come along and the land that they had sold would return to them. In fact, the Torah is so sensitive, so compassionate, and so generous, right, in terms of the interactions between Israelites, that this week's Torah portion actually makes explicit you're not allowed to charge interest. You make someone a loan, you're not allowed to charge them interest. So an amazing Torah portion with a lot of ideas that are, to call them progressive is I don't know, it's doesn't do it justice. It's incredibly different way of looking at and understanding the world. So an amazing chapter, an amazing parsha, except for one small detail. And that is that in this week's Torah portion, one of the most disturbing elements of our sacred tradition comes clear. And that is, while you were never allowed to hold an Israelite in slavery in perpetuity forever, this week's Torah portion actually makes it clear that the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, if one of them should become your slave, they would be your slaves forever. Now think about that, folks. We have a sacred text that we read from every week. We have a sacred text that we say is the basis of our tradition and the way God communicated to us. And yet it contains within it the idea that you can hold a person in perpetuity as your slave. That's quite a conundrum. There are a lot of different answers. And different answers, they're good answers, but what makes them good depends upon who we are as people and what we gravitate towards. My favorite is one that was offered up by a teacher of mine many, many years ago when we were first studying this together in rabbinical school. And he said the following. He said, this commandment was put in here in order to teach us to question everything. Absolutely everything. To think about everything. To be willing to challenge everything. Because this commandment in our sacred literature should not be here. This is wrong, he said. This is not good Torah in and of itself. This is Torah that teaches by us learning to interpret around it. And so our goal as students is to figure out ways and to understand difficult parts of the Torah. And this one, he said, we look at, and I learned, he said, that no one person, no one book can show me the way. I have to find it for myself. And I will only find my path, I will only find my derech if I question and not just take what my religious tradition says unthinkingly. This is the commandment and this is the parsha, he said, that keeps that in my mind always. I think about that, Aliyah, as we share this morning together. Because look, you are, very smart, you are very intelligent, you are very talented. You're into musical theater, you dance, you act, you sing. You are a genuinely kind person, and you're very social. Wave, friends, wave. Yay, friends. And like to work with people and be with people. And there's also a tremendous maturity about you. I can't remember the last time I heard a bat mitzvah speech talk about time management. It's generally not what 13-year-olds talk about. But you understand that if you want to do all the things you want to do, the only way to do it is to manage your time. And so you do that. And I think that's just a marvelous sense of awareness and maturity that you have. And so I'm sure you have been told these things before, though. I'm sure you've been told you're talented. I'm sure you've been told that you're smart. I'm sure that you have been told that you are kind and you have many wonderful qualities. And I hope that people keep telling you that. And also know that that's not enough. In order to find your path in this world, it's not enough to be talented. It's not enough to be kind and gracious and smart, and you are all those things. You also have to question. So my charge to you is that you take your bat mitzvah parsha seriously, and that you learn to question. You learn to question everything and anyone that tells you that this is the way it must be, so that you learn for yourself what is the derech, what is the path that you have to follow. Because there are many things that many people can do, but only you can follow your own path. Shabbat Shalom. Mazel Tov. Did a wonderful job here this morning. So very proud of you and for you.
Thank you.
Now, at this time, I'm going to invite the cantor to come up as we're going to join together and share some blessings. But before we do that, we also have some gifts that we wish to share with you. Jacob, could you just hold up that silver bag there, please? No, just the bag. Hold up the bag. In that bag, you have a number of gifts that we are giving you. So you have a certificate of bat mitzvah, just in case you forgot that this day happened. This way you will remember. You also have a certificate from the Jewish National Fund for trees planted in your honor. Also in there is a book from the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles called Israel Matters. Israel is such an incredible, dynamic, and important part of our own lives, and something that's honestly going through, a state that's going through its own election challenges, and it's fascinating, and it's troubling, and it's exciting, and in order to tap into that, you got to know something. A book like that gives you the opportunity to do that. Also in there, we have a mezuzah with a cloth in it to be put in from our women of Adat, and also from the men of Adat, we have a Torah reading kippah, an acknowledgement of the Torah reading that you did. And last but not least, but we also have from the LA Jewish Teen Connection. Oh, there's a Torah reading kippah. We have also the a packet of things. There it is. I like my assistance here. So this packet contains with it not only groovy socks and other things, but the LA Jewish Teen Connection and Program is an amazing program that Federation puts on for Jewish teens throughout Los Angeles. They do amazing stuff, and we hope that you take advantage of it. So these gifts we give to you, as well as the blessing that the cantor and I will now share.
Thank you.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
Allie, may God bless you and be a guide for you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God's face turn towards you and be gracious to you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
Allie, may a sense of God's presence surround you always and call to you. And in responding to that call, may you walk paths of peace, paths of shalom. And we all say, Amen and Mazel Tov.
Siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov. Yehelanu, 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 ulecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulecho Yisrael.
So Allie, I have to ask one more thing of you. If you wouldn't mind, please standing up, Allie, along with your parents and your brother and your sister. Well, she's busy collecting candy right now, so we might have to wait on that. But as we join together in the blessing of Thanksgiving, the Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
We acknowledge you, God, as a source of all life and grateful for the flow of life that brings us to this moment, this time of celebration, this time of joy, and we all say, Amen. Mazel tov to all of you. So at this point in time, we're going to ask everyone to please rise as we turn now to page 180 for the Birkat HaChodesh, for the prayer for the new month. Let's put my towels back on. May it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors. Grant that this month bring us goodness and blessing, and bestow on us long life, a life that is peaceful, a life that is good, a life that is blessed, a life with proper sustenance, a life with physical vitality, a life conscious of heaven's demands and wary of sin, a life free of shame and reproach, a life of abundance and honor, a life of love of Torah, conscious of heaven's demands, life in which the worthy desires of our hearts are fulfilled. Amen.
Mi she'asa nisim lavotenu le'imotenu v'galotam me'avdut le'cherut hu yigalotanu otanu bekarov hu yigal otanu bekarov, hu yigal otanu bekarov, hu yigal otanu bekarov, bikabetz nidachenu, me'arba kanfot haaretz, Chaverim,
Kol Yisrael, Haverim, Kol Yisrael, Haverim, Kol Yisrael,
Venomar, Amen. Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Yeh biyom revi'i, Haba aleinu v'al kol Yisrael l'tova.
The new month of Sivan will begin on Tuesday night. May it hold blessing for us and for all people Israel and for all inhabitants of our world. May the Holy One bless all of us this month with life and peace, joy and gladness, deliverance and comfort, and let us all say, Amen.
Amen. Yechadesheu HaKadosh Baruch Hu aleinu v'al kol amo beit Yisrael lechayim u'leshalom.
Amen.
Lesason u'lesimcha.
Amen.
Lishua u'lenechama. Venomar. Amen.
My friends, you may be seated. Page 181, Ashrei.
Allie. Ashrei.
Allie's doing Ashrei.
Come on up, Allie.
Let me open up my book. Okay. Ashrei, Ashrei Betecha, Od Yehalalu Chasala.
Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am shadonai Elohav.
Tehillah LaDavid, Aramimcha Elohai HaMelech, Ve'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed.
V'chol yom avarcheka, va'ahalel shimcha le'olam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai Umhulal Me'od, Ve'litu Lato Ein Heker.
Dor l'dor yishabach ma'asecha, u'gvurotecha yagidu.
Hadar Kevod Hodecha, Ve'divrei Niflotecha Asicha.
Ve'ezuz
Noratecha Yomeru, Ugulatcha Saprena.
Zecherav Tuvcha Yabiyu, Ve'tzikatcha Yeranenu.
Chanun Rachom Adonai, Erech Apayim Ugdol Chesed.
Tov Adonai Lakol, V'rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav.
Yoduch Adonai Kol Ma'asecha, V'chasidecha Yevarchucha.
Kevod Malchut HaYomeru, Ugvurat HaYedaberu.
Lehodia livnei ha'adam gvurotav, u'chvod adar malchuto.
Malchut HaMalchut Kol Olamim, Umemshaltcha Bechol Dor Vador.
Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol ha'kfufim.
Enecho Elecha Yesaberu, Va'ata Noten Lahem Et Ochlam Beito.
Poteach et yadecha, u'maspil l'chol chai ratzon.
Tzadik Adonai Bechol Derachav, V'chasid Bechol Ma'asav.
Karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol asher yikravuhu ve'emet.
Ratzon Yera'av Ya'aseh, Ve'et Shavatam Yishma Ve'yoshiyem.
Shomer Adonai et kol oavav, v'et kol ha'reshayim yashmid.
Tehillat Adonai Yedaber Pi, Ve'yivarech Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Ve'olam Va'ed.
V'anachnu nevarech Yah, Me'atav Yad Olam. Hallelujah. Well done again. Yashakach, Ali, you may be seated. Well, actually, no one should be seated. In fact, everyone, please rise as we now turn to page 183, and we return the Sefer Torah to the Aron HaKodesh. And
I invite Ali's family to come up and be in charge of returning the Torah.
Oh.
All 5 of you.
go on, Evan. Yeah, no.
Ali, give the Torah to Ali. Okay, face the congregation and stay for just a moment. You can walk the ramps in just a moment. Yeah, hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodo l'eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren leyamo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor, 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 mizmor leDavid. Mizmor, 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 mizmor leDavid. Mizmor, mizmor, mizmor leDavid. Mizmor, mizmor, mizmor leDavid. Havul Adonai b'nei Elim. Havul Adonai kavod ba'oz. Havul Adonai kevod shema v'ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh. Adonai lamabul yasham. Vayeshev Adonai melech le'olam. Adonai oz liyamo ayiten. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Mizmor, 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 mizmor leDavid. Mizmor, 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 mizmor leDavid. Mizmor, mizmor, mizmor leDavid. Mizmor, mizmor, mizmor leDavid. Uvnucho yomar. Wait, hold on just a second. Eitz chayim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomcheha meyushar derachea darchei noam v'chol netivotea shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. Chadish, chadish yameinu, chadish yameinu kekedem. You may close the Aron HaKodesh.
All right, my friends, you may all be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So, for my comments on this week's Torah portion, first, a story, because I love stories, and this is one of my favorites. So once there was a king, and he was a good king and a decent king as far as kings went, but he was also a very anxious king. He was always worried. He was always concerned that something bad was going to happen, that something was bad going to happen to him, to his family, to his people, to his country. He was constantly worrying that people would think poorly of him, or that his government ministers would try to overthrow him, or that he wasn't doing enough to help the people. He was weighed down by anxiety, by worry, by concern, and by fear. And he said to himself, how do people do it? I'm the king, and look at all that I have. Look at all the security that I can afford just being king. Look at all the people who surround me. Look at everyone who does for me. How do regular people who don't have all of this, how do they get through the day without being overwhelmed by their anxiety and their fear? And so he decided that he would explore and investigate. And so one day he dressed up as a common person so that no one could recognize him. And he went out into the town to visit and see and watch people on a day-to-day basis. How did they deal with the concerns that surround us all the time? And he walked through and he didn't see any answers. He just saw people going about their day. And at the very end of the day, he walked by a cobbler's store, and he saw the man sitting at a table with nothing but a little bit of bread and a little bit of drink. And he knocked on the door, and the cobbler opened it. And he said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm a poor traveler. I'm just wandering through. I don't have any place to stay or anything to eat. Could you spare a little bit for me?" And he was just curious what this man would say, given what he saw that the man had or didn't have. And the cobbler, much to the king's surprise, said, "Sure, come, please, share whatever I have." And he came in, and the king spoke to him and wanted to find out, how does he deal? How does he manage the fear and the anxiety? And so as they're talking, he brings up this question, and he says to him, "What do you do?" He says, "Well, I'm a cobbler." He says, "You fix shoes?" "I fix shoes." "And what happens if you don't have shoes tomorrow to fix? How are you going to make it through the next day?" And the man looked at him and simply said, "Baruch Hashem yom yom." Thank God every day. We'll see how it goes. And that's all he said. But he looked calm. He didn't look anxious. He looked happy. He didn't look overwhelmed. And so the king was surprised and said, "Okay, let's see, Baruch Hashem yom yom, how well you do when the pressure's on." And so the very next day, the king went and issued a decree, because kings can do that, says no one can make a living off of fixing shoes anymore. He wanted to see what the cobbler would do, how his response would change under this kind of pressure, now that the fear of how he's going to maintain himself has been introduced. And so the king then went to visit the cobbler at the end of the day, to see what the cobbler did. How did the cobbler get by now that he couldn't fix shoes? And he knocked on the man's door, and the man opened the door, and he said, "Sir, I still have not found a place to stay or anything. Do you mind if I share some of your bread?" And the cobbler said, "Sure, come on in." And the king was surprised, because the king was sure that the cobbler would have locked him out at this point in time, having no way to support himself. So he sat down with the cobbler. He said, "So, I hear the king issued a decree that you couldn't fix shoes. What did you do?" And the cobbler looked at the man and said, "Baruch Hashem yom yom. Thank God every day. As I heard the king's decree in the town square, I also looked around, and I saw that there were some people, some old women, schlepping water that they'd gone out of town to the well outside the town to bring in. And so I offered for a few coins to schlep for them. And some other people saw me doing that, and they said, 'We'll pay you some coins too.' And so today I'm no longer a cobbler. I'm a water schlepper." And the man the king disguised as a regular person, said, "What happens if you can't be a water schlepper tomorrow?" And the man said, "Baruch Hashem yom yom. I'll figure it out." And so the king, you kind of get where this is going, right? So the king obviously goes back, issues a decree. No one can now support themselves being a water schlepper. And so that night, after the guy had now been told that he could not support himself this way, that night, the very next night, the king goes to visit the cobbler to see, "Okay, Baruch Hashem yom yom, how are you doing now?" So knocks on the door. Cobbler answers the door. Says, "Sir, I'm sorry." He says, "Don't even bother. Come on in." And he came on in, shared his bread. He said, "So, I hear the king said you can't make a living off of water schlepping. So what did you do this time?" He says, "Well, it's interesting, because when I was in the town square hearing the decree that the king had just issued, I noticed some people coming in from the forest with wood. And I said, 'Well, I have an axe.' And so I went out into the forest, and I chopped down some trees, and I brought in the wood, and I sold the wood, and therefore I had enough so that we can have some bread tonight. So now I'm a woodcutter." "You're a woodcutter?" "I'm a woodcutter." "And what happens if the king says no one can earn a living off of woodcutting?" The man said, "Baruch Hashem yom yom." Okay. And so the king obviously issues a decree, no one can cut wood. Goes the very next day, says to the man that night, "So how did you get through this time?" Right? Couldn't schlep water. He couldn't cut wood. How did he get through? So the king visits him, and once again, the cobbler, who was a water schlepper, who is a woodcutter, answers the door serenely, lets the king in. And once the king asks him what went on, and the water schlepper told him, and this time, instead of doing the wood cutting, which he couldn't do, he hauled coal. There were people who needed coal. He said, "I could help them." Baruch Hashem yom yom. And so now the king had it. And the man was just too clever for him and couldn't be tricked in any way. So the king issued a decree that anyone who was carrying coal the day before has to now be part of the king's army. So the water schlepper, or the let's see if I get this. The cobbler, who was a water schlepper, became a woodcutter, became a coal hauler, was now part of the king's army. And he's there, and he's now part of the king's army, and the king also issues another decree. No one gets paid the first week that they're part of the king's army. He's got him. He's got him. And so that night he goes and he says, knocks on the door, and again, the guy answers, it lets him in, shares the bread, yes. And he says, how did you do it? How do you have bread to share? You're now part of the king's army and they didn't pay anybody. How do you do this? And the man said, well, listen, I was walking back without my pay at the end of the day, and I realized I have a sword. And so I sold the sword for some money. But the king, still in disguise, said, but if they discover that you don't have your sword, they will kill you. Baruch Hashem, yum yum. Take that one as it comes. For now, I'm just going to put a wooden sword in its place. Should be fine. So, the very next day, the king calls together all his troops, and he calls forward a person, and he says, this man has been accused of stealing, and I want this man, pointing to the cobbler, who was a water schlepper, who was a woodcutter, who was a coal hauler, and now in the king's army, I want this man to cut off his hands. Knowing that, of course, he didn't have a sword. What would he do now? And so, the cobbler, who was a water schlepper, who was a woodcutter, who was a coal hauler, now comes forward. And he looks down at the man who the king has ordered him to cut his hands off. And he says, if this man is guilty, then let my sword ring true. But if this man is innocent of his crime, let my sword be turned into wood. And he takes out the sword, and of course, it's wood. And everyone gasps, except for the king, who realizes the wisdom of the cobbler, who was a water schlepper, who was a woodcutter, who was a coal hauler, and who simply understood that the best way to approach the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty of each day, Baruch Hashem yum yum. Thank you. Thank you, God. Now that is the question. That's the answer. Now let me tell you what the question is that story answers. In this week's Torah portion, Parshat Bahar, a number of different items are spoken about that deal with the land, that deal with the economy, and that deal with people. And in looking at this whole chapter, a brilliant rabbi known as the Ishbitzer Rebbe, Ishbitz being a town in Poland, the Ishbitzer Rebbe, in his commentary, the Mehashiloach, notes the following. He says, if you look at this chapter, not individually look at the laws, but look at them in totality, there is a theme. If you look at the Shemitah year says you have to let the land lie fallow for at least 1 year because you don't control the land. It's not yours. And then there's the Yovel, the Jubilee year, where all people are released from any kind of servitude and able to return back to their homes. And this is a way of saying that you don't control people either. And then he notes the mitzvah of not charging ribit, of not charging interest, right? And interest is something that you get because of one factor, time. Time is what lets interest accrue. And by saying that you cannot charge interest, what the Torah is teaching here is you don't have control over time either. So the Ishbitzer looks at this Torah portion, looks at this chapter, and says this chapter is all fundamentally about teaching us that human beings are not in control. We do not control the world. We do not control people. We do not control time. And in this sense, chapter 25 of the book of Leviticus in the Torah perfectly captures that very first and fundamental step of the 12-step program. Acknowledging that our lives are unmanageable, that we are not in control. We know this to be true. We have lived this. This past year has taught us, Ali, many things, you're right. But among the things it should have taught us is the fact that we certainly are not in control. The entire world, 7 billion people, were just shut down. And will continue in surges and in spurts to be shut down. Friends, we are not in control here. We like to think we're in control. And when we sense our lack of control, our anxiety and our fear comes out, often badly, in anger and aggression. And so the question that the Torah portion asks is, how do you deal with it? How do we deal with the fear, the anxiety, the concern that goes along with everyday living? As I said, the story is the answer. Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Find things for which to be grateful. Find things in your life that lift you up. Find things in your life that are given to you by that same uncontrollable, messy world, and express gratitude. Now, expressing gratitude is a dance that requires a few steps. In order to be good at it, it helps to be present, to actually be in the moment, to be aware of what is being given to us at any given moment. It also helps to practice a little humility. We are so full of ourselves. We are so full of our sense of who we are. We take up so much space. We act in such entitled manners. It is revolting. We are entitled to nothing, my friends. Nothing. The world is not ours. The world is a gift. And we need to approach it that way. But one can only see it if one gets over oneself enough and doesn't take up all the space in one's own mind. And so we practice humility. And lastly, forgiveness. To be grateful is to be forgiving. And I say forgiving because forgiving is not an act. You don't grant forgiveness like the king bestowing it, for that just simply reinforces a power dynamic. Forgiveness is not an act, it's an attitude. It's a way that someone who is wise approaches the world because we understand how uncontrollable and how unmanageable the world actually is. We understand that the hurts and the pains that come our way, whether they are events, whether they are people, whether they are objects, do so often without any intent, and we are but the collateral damage on the side. Being present, being humble, and being forgiven, these are the things, these are the steps that help us dance out the dance of gratitude and live our life with grace and with joy. May we all be able to do so each and every day. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We now continue our service on the bottom of page 184 with the Chatzi Kaddish before the Musaf Amidah.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba Amen. Ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchayedocha beit Yisrael v'gala uvizman kariv ve'imeru Amen. Yesh me Rabba mevorach le'olam ule'olamei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei de kudesha shmei de kudesha shmei de kudesha berichu Shmei de Kudesha, Shmei de Kudesha, Shmei de Kudesha berichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran beyalema ve'imeru 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 imeru amen ve'imeru 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 amen ve'imeru 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 imeru amen ve'imeru 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 amen.
Invite everyone to please rise as we now turn to page 185 for the opening blessings of the Musaf Amidah. And also, as with the Shakrit Amidah, this one, we face east.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Agadol Agibor ve'Anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim
וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, וחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, וכמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נעריצך ונקדישך, כסוד שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה, ויאמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לאומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, ממקומו הוא יפן ברחמים, ויחונם המייחדים שמו ערב ובוקר, בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים פעמיים, באהבה שמה אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית, לעיני כל חי, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך קדוש וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Yitkara v'yitkara shemei rabbah. B'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayachonu v'yimechonu v'chaydocha b'ed Yisrael ba'agala v'izman kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach. Le'olam le'omei omaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitruman v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitala v'yitala shmei kudesha.
B'richu.
V'yichuli min kol birchata v'shirata tushbchata v'nechamata tamir p'yama v'yimeru.
Amen.
Titkabel tzloton uvalton d'chol Yisrael kodam avohandi v'shmaya v'yimeru. Amen.
Amen.
Yesh shlam rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Amen.
Yoseh shalom b'mromav u'yaseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'kol yoshvei tevel v'yimeru. Amen.
On page 204, we find Ein Kelohenu, but what we need to now find is Evan up there on the center bima.
Yeah, you can point it lower, even that microphone. There you go.
When do you want to tell me to go?
Ready, go.
Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kumakenu, Ein Kamoshienu, Mi Elohenu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kumakenu, Mi Kamoshienu, No Deladohenu, No Deladohenu, No Delamakenu, No Delamoshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Makenu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Makenu, Atahu Moshienu.
Yasher kochech. Very good, Evan.
And as we turn to page 205, I'm going to ask again everyone to please rise and once again face east for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet gedula le'yotzeh breshit shelo asanu kagoye haratzot velo samanu kamishbechot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'goralenu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim livnei melech malchei amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim Beyosed Haaretz, U'Moshe V'Yekaro B'Shamayim Ima'al, U'Shchinatu Zo, V'Govhei Meromim, Hu Eloheinu Einot, Emet Malkeinu Efes Zulato, Kakatu B'Torato, V'Dat Hayom V'Ashavota, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, B'Shamayim Imal, Ve'al ha'aretz, Mitachat, Einod. Kakatu betoratecha, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed, v'nemar v'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
May be seated. Yeshikach. We now turn to page 207. for the Mourner's Kaddish. Once again, I invite anyone who is here or who's watching to please rise as we join together for this prayer of sanctification, this prayer of remembrance. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach chirutei ve'amlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam lo me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechmata za'amiran be'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Aseh shalom bimramav. Huya aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Alrighty, my friends. At this point in time, we're going to have a few announcements. Yes, Cantor Aronoff?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So just a few things that we want to just kind of bring to people's attention and acknowledge. First, by way of acknowledging, we want to acknowledge Allie and the whole family. Aliyah Shakach, beautiful job.
Shakah.
Really, just wonderful, wonderful to be able to share it with you, with your family, with the whole friends and everybody. Thank you so much. And just really great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful mazel tov. Also want to thank Cantor Aronoff for leading us in services so beautifully. I'd like to thank our darshan, which was me. I would like to thank all the people who actually go around here. Oh, thank you very much. There's so many people who make this service possible, who make it happen, who can enable us to broadcast and do all this stuff. So thank you to all of them, including our new sound person, Boris. Thank you very much. And also just a few things we want to acknowledge in terms of upcoming events. A past event we had was a very successful blood drive here at Dot Ariel where we raised 29 pints of blood. By the way, that has the potential of saving over 80 lives. So if you ever have the opportunity, here or anywhere, to give blood, please, please do so. Our Shavuot program is coming up on Sunday, May 16th at 8 o'clock. We're joining with Temple Beth Hillel. You can sign up, or not sign up, you can find out all the information, all the classes for the Tikkun, for the program at night. We're going to be having services here in the morning for the first and second day of Shavuot. Sign up is similar to the way that we do it on Shabbat, so again, please look at the website. Our ECC is having its annual art galleries coming up this Saturday night. It will be a virtual event and ask people to look at it, sign up, join, support our nursery school. They do amazing stuff in our early childhood center. We also have the Women of Adat are hosting Lunafest. We're hosting it drive-in style on Wednesday, May 19th at 8 o'clock. This is Lunafest, for people who are not aware, is a showing of various movies. Is that correct?
Indeed.
Are they short stories?
Are they short movies?
Are they short movies?
Films? It differs year to year.
Yeah, so different. They do great stuff, though, and really encourage people to support a Women of Adat and that event. And last but not least, on May 21st, we have our Naranana service, our musical service. It's an amazing service. It's a lot of fun, and hope that you'll join us. Cantor Aronoff, did I leave anything out?
You did a great job.
Thank you. So we are now going to move to conclude services, first with Adon Olam, and I'm going to invite Ali and Jacob back up to the bima as we turn to page 211. Oh, Evan, do you want to join too? No? Page 211.
And Lori, would you like to get the Kiddush cup ready? Great. All right, you guys, whenever you're ready to start.
Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Asher Malach,
Asher Malach,
B'terem Kol,
B'terem Kol,
Yetzir Nivra,
Yetzir Nivra,
Leit Nasa,
Leit Nasa,
Behefzakol,
Hefzakol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon
Olam, Be'acharei Kichlot HaKol, Leva Ado Imloch Nara Adon Olam, Vehu Haya, Vehu Hoveh, Vehu Yeh Betifara Adon Olam, Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Asher Malach,
Asher Malach,
B'terem Kol,
B'terem Kol,
Yetzir Nivra,
Yitzir Nivra,
Leit Nasa,
Leit Nasa,
Behefzakol,
Behefzakol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam,
Vehu Echad Vein Sheni, Laham Shilo Lechachvira Adon Olam, Beli Reshit, Beli Tachlit, Velo Haos V'Ham Yisra Adon Olam, Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Asher Malach,
Asher Malach,
B'terem Kol,
B'terem Kol,
Yetzir Nivra,
Yitzir Nivra,
Leit Nasa,
Leit Nasa,
Behefzakol,
Behefzakol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam,
Vehu Eli V'chai Goali, Betzur chavli be'et tzara adon olam. Vehu nisi umanosli. Manat kosi beyom ekra adon olam.
Adon olam.
Asher malach.
Asher malach.
V'terem kol.
V'terem kol.
Yetzir nivra.
Yitzir nivra.
Le'et nasa.
Li'et nasa.
Hefsakol.
V'chefto kol. Azai melech shemo nikra adon olam.
Ve'ya'ado afkid ruchi. Ve'et ishan ve'a'ira adon olam. Ve'im ruchi. Geviati. Adonai li velo ira Adon olam, Adon olam.
Adon olam.
Asher malach.
Asher malach.
V'terem kol.
V'terem kol.
Yetzir nivra.
Yitzir nivra.
Le'et nasa.
Li'et nasa.
V'hefsa kol.
V'chefto kol. Azai melech shemo nikra adon olam. Lori, would you like to bring Allie the Kiddush cup, please?
Ask everyone to please rise.
Thanks.
Al Kain Beirach Adonai et Yom HaShabbat V'Kadshechu Chaverai.
L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and have a great day.